My boss stole my project and went to the investors with it. And I gave her the wrong files. And just watched her get lost and blush. Now I'm being called back to headquarters. No one calls my former boss anymore. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 32 years old. I've been working at Stratton Partners for 8 years now, and in all that time, I've never gotten the recognition I deserve. I'm not the one who grabs the spotlight, but I make things happen. I'm the one who stays up until 2 a.m., finishing reports, tweaking models, and ensuring that every presentation has the data to back it up. But no one ever talks about the late nights, the sacrifice, the hours I've poured into this place. They talk about Alicia. Alicia Trent, my boss, and by boss, I mean the woman who has mastered the art of climbing over everyone else to reach the top. She's everything I'm not: charismatic, ambitious, and ruthless in ways that make your skin crawl. She has this magnetic charm that makes everyone around her feel special, like they're the most important person in the room. But it's all an act, a well-crafted act that hides the truth. Alicia is a manipulator. She's the kind of woman who knows how to charm her way into meetings, steal credit for others' work, and walk away with all the glory. For the last 6 months, I've been working on a major project. It's not just any project, this is the one that could put Stratton Partners on the map. It's an investment strategy aimed at diversifying our portfolio into emerging markets. The research has been exhausting. I've been up to my neck in data, poring over every detail, every statistic, every forecast. The plan is complex, intricate, but brilliant. If it works, it'll change everything for the company. But no one knows the effort that's gone into it. No one sees the hours I've put in. No one sees the sacrifices I've made to get this project right. Alicia? She doesn't care about the work I've done. She sees only the outcome. She sees the potential glory, and in her world, that's the only thing that matters. She's always known how to use people. I'm just one of many pawns in her game. She's watched me, studied me, how I work, how I keep my head down and do my job without complaint. That's why, a few days ago, she called me into her office. The door was already open when I arrived. Alicia was sitting behind her sleek, glass desk, a faint smile playing on her lips. It was the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Emily," she said, her voice smooth and rehearsed, "I've been keeping an eye on your work. It's impressive. You've done a great job on this investment project. It's time for you to step up and present it to the investors. I want you to defend it in front of them. You've earned it." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to say something, to tell her that I was the one who built it from the ground up, but instead, I just smiled. "Thank you, Alicia. I'm honored." Her eyes gleamed with a satisfaction that sent a chill down my spine. She leaned forward, clasping her hands together. "You'll need to have all the data ready. Of course, the projections, the numbers, everything. Don't worry, I'll be here to support you." Support. I knew what she meant. She wasn't offering help. She was offering ownership. She wanted to take my work and present it as her own. I could see it in her eyes, that glint of calculated strategy. She wasn't interested in my hard work or the sleepless nights I'd spent perfecting this project. She only wanted to be the face of it. I could feel the anger simmering beneath the surface, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I simply nodded. "Of course, I'll get everything prepared." She smiled again, that same cold smile that I had come to dread. "Good, you'll do great." As I walked out of her office, my mind was racing. I knew what she was doing. This was her way of taking credit for my work. I'd seen it before. She would stand in front of the investors, pitch my idea, and act like she had come up with it herself. I'd always been quiet about it, always kept my head down, but now things were different. I had spent 6 months pouring my heart and soul into this project. I wasn't going to let Alicia steal it from me, not this time. As I sat back down at my desk, I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. What was I going to do? I had 2 choices. I could continue to play by the rules, work hard, and hope that eventually, Someone would recognize my talent, or I could take control. I knew what my choice had to be. I opened my laptop, staring at the rows of data on the screen. I thought about the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the endless hours spent refining every detail. I thought about Alicia, about her smug smile, her cold, calculating eyes, and for the first time, I realized something. I wasn't going to be the one left in the shadows. I wasn't going to let her walk away with all the credit. I would let her pitch it, but not the way she thought. The days leading up to the presentation felt like a slow crawl. Each morning, I walked into the office, pretending everything was fine, pretending I wasn't consumed by the bubbling anger inside me. Alicia, as expected, spent her time charming the executives, making herself look good, while I continued to do the grunt work. The closer the presentation date came, the more I saw her pull away from the project, leaving the heavy lifting to me. But as much as it irked me, I had to admit, it was all part of her strategy. She would let me do all the hard work, then swoop in at the last minute, taking credit for everything. She'd present my idea to the investors, act as if she were the genius behind it all, and everyone would bow down to her once again. The thing is, no one would question her. She had the charm, the connections, and the reputation. That's why, at night, I would sit in my cubicle long after everyone had left, staring at the numbers. I'd been reviewing the final drafts of the presentation, making sure the figures lined up, that everything looked perfect. But the more I thought about it, the more the idea of Alicia stealing my work, taking my credit, made my blood boil. I could already picture it, her standing up in front of those investors, smiling with that look of fake humility on her face, taking credit for my ideas. I couldn't let it happen, not this time. It was on the third night, just a few days before the big pitch, that I made my decision. I sat down in front of my computer, the soft click of the keyboard filling the otherwise quiet office. I opened the file, the one that contained all the crucial data for the project. I had spent hours refining it, making sure everything was accurate, but I knew something had to change. I couldn't just let Alicia waltz in and claim everything. The first thing I did was remove the original project files, not all of them. Of course, I knew better than to make it too obvious. I deleted just enough to cause confusion. The key projections, the ones that proved the viability of the strategy, I swapped out with altered numbers. Not drastic changes, but just enough to throw things off. The conclusions, the final recommendations, those, too, I distorted them, making the logic slightly off, enough that someone unfamiliar with the data might not be able to make sense of it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. The plan was set. In the next step, I had to make sure Alicia would present it. I wasn't going to give her the luxury of a perfect pitch. If she wanted to take credit for something she didn't create, then she would have to work for it. The day of the presentation would be her moment to shine, or fail spectacularly. I could already imagine it. Alicia would stand in front of the investors, the room full of suits and ties, all of them hanging on her every word. But when it came time to explain the numbers, to back up the strategy, she would falter. She wouldn't be able to answer their questions. She'd try to cover it up, smooth over the inconsistencies, but I knew it would only get worse. The more she tried to explain, the more confused she'd look, and in the end, she would be exposed for what she really was, a fraud. But I couldn't let it stop there. No. This wasn't just about making her look bad in front of a room full of investors. This was about making sure the right people knew what happened. I needed a record of her failure. I needed proof that she had sabotaged herself with her own arrogance. That's when I had the idea. I would be in the audience. I would watch it all unfold, and I would record it, not just for myself, but for anyone else who might need to see it. Alicia's downfall would be on video. A permanent reminder of what happens when you try to steal someone else's work. But as I sat there, staring at my phone, a new thought began to form. What if the video didn't just stay in my phone? What if it found its way into the right hands, someone who could use it to hold Alicia accountable? The idea gave me a sense of power, of control that I hadn't felt before. I could almost hear Alicia's voice in my head, echoing through the empty office. "You've earned it, Emily. It's time to step up." But the truth was, I had earned it, and now, I was going to take it. I wasn't going to let her make a fool out of me any longer. She had underestimated me for too long. I couldn't help but smile to myself as I packed up for the night. There was still more work to be done. The next few days would be tense, but everything was falling into place. The final pieces of the puzzle were coming together. Alicia would take the stage. She would present the numbers, and then she would fail. And when that moment came, I would be ready. The morning of the big presentation, I woke up earlier than usual. There was an unusual calmness to my thoughts, a feeling of certainty I hadn't had in a long time. I was prepared, more prepared than Alicia could ever imagine. The last few days had been spent in a blur of last-minute tweaks, all designed to make the project seem flawless on the surface. The data was altered. The projections skewed just enough to cause confusion but not enough to be immediately noticeable. I'd ensured that there were small inconsistencies in every part of the presentation, nothing that couldn't be explained away by someone with a sharp mind and quick thinking. I arrived at the office before anyone else, as was my custom. The building was quiet, and the hum of the fluorescent lights in the hallway was the only sound I could hear. I walked into the conference room, the one where the pitch would take place. The long table sat in the center, surrounded by high-backed chairs. On the screen at the far end of the room, a PowerPoint presentation sat ready, waiting for the click of a button to begin. I walked up to the screen, plugged in my laptop, and checked everything one last time. I made sure the files were ready, but I didn't open them yet. I wanted everything to look normal. I didn't want to raise any suspicion. Alicia, of course, hadn't arrived yet. She never did early preparations. She liked to make an entrance. It was one of the things that made her so infuriatingly effective at manipulating people. She knew how to command attention the moment she walked into a room. I didn't have to wait long before I saw her. She walked in with that perfect posture, her heels clicking confidently against the polished floor. Her hair was styled perfectly, her suit crisp and professional, but there was something almost theatrical in her movements. She had that air about her, the kind that made people think she was untouchable, like she had it all figured out, like nothing could go wrong. "Good morning, Emily," she said, her smile as practiced as ever. "Morning," I replied, keeping my voice calm, steady. "I've set everything up. The slides are ready to go." She nodded, glancing at the screen. "Great. I've already gone through the final numbers. I'll handle the introduction, but I'll leave the details to you. You've done the hard work. Just make sure you explain everything clearly." I nodded, though I knew what was coming. This was it, the moment she would take the reins, stand before the investors, and try to present my work as her own. I wasn't sure how it would play out, but I knew one thing for sure: it wouldn't be easy for her. More people began to filter into the room, other executives from Stratton Partners, some of the most important investors, and a few other team members who had worked on the project. I sat in my chair, pretending to focus on the presentation as the room filled up with murmurs and polite greetings. My mind was elsewhere, however. I was already replaying the presentation in my head, visualizing Alicia's every move, anticipating the moment when everything would start to fall apart for her. Finally, the room quieted down, and Alicia stood at the front, taking her position with effortless grace. She gave the room one last look, making sure she had everyone's attention, before clicking the button to start the presentation. "Good morning, everyone," Alicia began. "Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to present a new investment strategy that will set us apart in the global market. Emily here has been instrumental in bringing this project to life, and I'm confident you will all see its potential." I barely heard the rest of her introduction. The words seemed to blur together as I braced myself for what was about to happen. Alicia moved seamlessly into the first few slides, speaking with that practiced confidence, her tone smooth and polished. She outlined the project's objectives, the key goals, and the expected return on investment. But then, it came, the moment I had been waiting for. She clicked to the next slide, and the numbers were there, bold and clear, the projections, the heart of the strategy, and it didn't take long for her to stumble. At first, it was subtle, a slight hesitation in her voice as she glanced at the numbers on the screen, her eyes scanning the data. She clicked to the next slide, but something was wrong. Her words didn't match the figures. She went on, trying to explain the returns, but the numbers didn't add up the way she had expected. She tried to cover it up, glossing over the inconsistencies, but the room had begun to notice. A few of the investors were shifting in their seats, murmuring quietly among themselves. It was subtle at first, but the tension in the air was palpable. Alicia's calm exterior was cracking, and she knew it. The more she talked, the more her words seemed rehearsed, forced. She tried to distract the room, making small talk about trends in the market, about the potential opportunities, but the investors weren't buying it. They could see the cracks in the facade. I watched from my seat, a sense of satisfaction growing in my chest. She was unraveling before everyone's eyes, and I was just sitting back, watching the disaster unfold. She fumbled with the slides again, clicking through them too quickly, her smile becoming more strained with every passing second. Then, the questions started. One investor, a seasoned professional named Richard, raised his hand. He wasn't one for pleasantries. "Alicia," he said, his tone cutting through the room, "these numbers don't match the projections we've seen before. Can you explain the discrepancies?" Alicia's face tightened, but she quickly composed herself. Yes, of course. There's a slight adjustment that we made in the model." She tried to cover it up, but Richard wasn't satisfied. Another investor, a sharp woman named Laura, chimed in. "And what about the underlying assumptions? The data you're presenting doesn't align with the risk profile we discussed last quarter." Alicia froze, her eyes darted to the screen, then back to the investors, as if searching for a way out. The smile on her face had disappeared completely. She tried to explain, but her words felt hollow. Her confidence had shattered, and in its place, a crackling tension hung in the room. I could feel the weight of the moment, the satisfaction of knowing that Alicia was finally being exposed. The room was no longer in awe of her. The investors were questioning her, doubting her, and they had every right to. She was failing, and everyone could see it. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. Alicia was still trying to salvage the presentation, but it was no use. Every time she answered a question, it felt like she dug herself deeper into a hole. The investors' doubts were now too obvious to ignore. The silence that followed each of her explanations was worse than any outright critique. I could barely contain the small smile that tugged at the corners of my lips as I sat there, watching her crumble. There was no triumph, no excitement, just a cold, measured satisfaction that I had planned every detail perfectly. Alicia was talking, her words coming faster now, but they didn't make any sense. She was floundering, and I knew it was only a matter of time before someone in the room called her out for good. The questions kept coming, each one making her more defensive, more erratic. It was only a matter of time before the dam broke. And then, it happened. Richard, the investor who had been quiet up until now, stood up and held his hand out. His face was serious, his posture rigid. "Alicia," he said, his voice cutting through the tension in the room, "we've seen the numbers, we've reviewed the projections, and they don't add up. Not only that, but your answers are becoming more inconsistent with each question. We need someone who can explain this properly, someone who understands the project. You're not giving us that." Alicia's face went pale. For a moment, she stood there, frozen, as if the words hadn't quite registered. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted around the room, trying to find an ally, but no one was looking at her in the same way anymore. The power she had so confidently wielded earlier was slipping away. I could feel the stirrings of something colder in my chest. The time had come. The phone in my hand, which I had been gripping for the entire presentation, was now my weapon. The screen was on, the recording app open, and every word Alicia had said had been captured, every false explanation, every attempt to cover up the truth. The video I had been planning for weeks, the one that would show her failure to the entire company, was about to be the catalyst that destroyed her. I pressed the record button just as Alicia began to stammer. Her voice trembled, and for the first time in a long while, I saw her vulnerability, something she had worked so hard to hide. I think we should revisit the numbers, she said, her voice barely audible. Perhaps we need more time to explain the adjustments. But Richard wasn't having it. I think we've heard enough. You can't even defend your own work. We're pulling our investment. The words hit the room like a bombshell. I watched Alicia's face shift as the reality of what was happening finally sank in. She had lost control, and there was nothing she could do to stop it now. The project was slipping through her fingers, and all she could do was stand there in stunned silence, as if the world had just stopped turning. The investors began gathering their things, shaking their heads, murmuring among themselves. The air was thick with disappointment and frustration. I sat there, still holding my phone, capturing every moment of her humiliation. It felt almost too easy, but I wasn't going to stop here. This was just the beginning. As the room slowly emptied, I made my way to the back of the conference room, carefully avoiding Alicia's gaze. She was standing there, still trying to recover, but I could see the defeat in her eyes. She was done, and soon, the entire company would know it. When I got back to my desk, I wasted no time. I uploaded the video to my private cloud storage. It was raw, uncut, and showed everything: the fumbled explanations, the flustered panic in Alicia's eyes, the way she had tried so hard to salvage what she couldn't. It would be the proof I needed, the one thing that would expose her for the fraud she was. But I didn't just upload the video for myself. No, I had bigger plans. I sent a copy to the central office, to the higher-ups, the executives who had always seen Alicia as the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I knew it would get to them, knew it would spread like wildfire through the company, and when it did, there would be no going back for Alicia. I waited, my heart beating in my chest as I watched the file upload complete. This was the moment when everything would change. The phone rang a few hours later. I saw the caller ID flash, the central office. I had been expecting this, but it still made my pulse quicken. I answered the phone, keeping my tone calm and neutral. "Emily Hartman," I said. "Emily," a deep voice on the other end of the line said. It was Gregory, the senior VP of operations. "We've seen the video." I said nothing. There was no need. He continued, his voice firm but not angry. "First off, I want to be clear, we're not punishing you for what happened with Alicia. In fact, we're impressed with your work. You've been a valuable asset to this company, and we see your potential, but we need someone who can lead this project from the front." I blinked, confused for a moment. "What do you mean?" "We want to offer you a new position, Emily," Gregory said. "You'll be leading the next phase of the investment project. We believe you have the skills to take it where it needs to go." I paused, absorbing his words. It was happening. The respect I had longed for, the recognition that had been stolen from me, was finally mine. But I wasn't done yet. There was still more to do. "I understand," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "I'll be happy to take on the responsibility, but I think it's important that we address the situation with Alicia as well. She should know the truth about what happened today. It's the only way for her to learn from her mistakes." Gregory was silent for a moment. "Agreed. We'll take care of it." I hung up the phone, my heart finally slowing as I realized the full scope of my revenge. Alicia had taken credit for my work, but now the tables had turned. I had the power, and I would use it. The phone call marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I had exposed Alicia's lies, manipulated the situation to my advantage, and come out on top, but as I sat at my desk, staring at the glowing screen in front of me, I couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. The game had only just started.